The time has come. You're going to learn the basics of Rive right now. I'm going to show you how to use Rive to make the stylized flickering fire animation. If you've never used Rive before, this is a good first project to try out because it's going to get you used to using Rive's design space, just the general software feel of working in Rive, but also it's going to get you started with some of the really cool things that make Rive different, like the bone system, and of course the crown jewel of Rive and what makes it unique, the state machine. Don't worry, this is a really, really simple project. I'm going to show you how to do it really quickly. Just as a quick intro, if you used Figma before, then you're going to feel right at home in Rive. It just feels very similar to the design space and how you're working with vector graphics and stuff. If you've used After Effects, you will feel at home, but it'll feel like you've upgraded your home. Like you lived in sort of a dump before, and now you've moved to like Santa Monica on the beach, and you're like, wow, this is a really nice house. I don't hear my neighbors above me. There's doors, you know, there's like certain things that you never thought to upgrade before, and now that you're there, you're like, I do feel at home, but it's a better home than I had before. And so kind of want to just live here, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's get started. Let's just start with a quick flame design. In Rive, just hit new file, and we're going to make a blank artboard. 500 by 500 is fine. To start with creating shapes in Rive, there really is only just this one tool menu that you're ever going to need. And that's right here at the top where this pen is. Pull that down and you'll see rectangle, ellipse, triangle, polygon, star, and pen. As far as vector shapes go, you should be able to pretty much make whatever you need with these. There's even some hotkeys there. So P for pen, R for rectangle, and O for ellipse. I'm just gonna make a circle first, an ellipse, right in the center, or somewhere around here, just to give me a sense of where the sort of base of the flame is gonna be. And then we're gonna draw a shape of a flame. And try to keep it as simple as possible. You can make this however you want. You just want to make sure that there's at least a point at the base, one point on each side of the flame, and then depending on how complex you want to get, how many points on the top of the flame, and troughs, I guess. Like there's crests and peaks and valleys, right? So the valley, how many of those you want to have. So I'm just going to make one on each side, one point on each side, and then one valley in the middle. You can use the pen tool. It's right up here under Create Tools, P for pen. And I'm just going to start drawing a flame. And let's see. Right here is good. Here, and then we'll do this. And then I'm going to adjust this bottom and sides. And I also kind of want to give it a curve here. So at this point, I'm going to go up here to what kind of point converters you can make. And I'm going to make one that's just like a broken Bezier handle. And that way I can give this side a little bit more attention. So as you're pulling this, you'll notice there's a little bit of snapping that happens. And if you don't want that, you can just hold Control or Command, and it'll give you the freedom to be able to put this wherever you want without it snapping. And we'll do the same with this side. Great. So now we have a base shape for our flame. I'm going to clean it up a little bit. It looks like this side's a little bit wonky. And that works pretty well for me. I'm going to call this the flame shape. And we'll put this under the flame base, and I'll just kind of center it up and make it look nice. So now we get to play with some of the gradient fills, the color variations and stuff like that. I'm going to use the same style that I showed you before, where I have this really, really dark background. And so I'll do that here on the stage. On this new artboard, I can go over here to the fills, and I'm just going to make it completely black. On the outside of the flame, you're going to have really bright colors, but on the inside, it's just going to be basically black, or it's going to be, it's just going to fade into nothing. So I wanted to actually just, for the base color, we're going to make it black for now. And then I'm going to start adding fill gradients right above it. And so for this fill, I'm just going to mess with the first color so I can see it. There we go. So we've got ourselves a nice kind of purple color, and then it's going to fade into the center right here. And you can really, really like dial this in however you want. But I think this sort of deep purple is nice. And so I'm going to make this end right here. And then we're going to make another one on the other side. And also, I'm making sure that this other color, the second color in the gradient, is going all the way to 0 in the alpha. And so that way it's fading completely. So this third gradient, or this third color fill, I'm going to make another linear gradient, but coming from the other side, where it fades into the center again. And on this side, let's make this color, again, just kind of a nice pinkish purple. We'll make it a little bit brighter perhaps on this side. You can see how like you can really layer these up to create an interesting effect with your flame or whatever you want to do. I think I want to add one more gradient here at the bottom. And so I'm going to open up the shape itself, and I'm going to add a gradient, and we're going to change this to linear, but from the bottom. And we're going to make this first one sort of that nice deep pink. There we go. Have it go towards the top, and we'll make it that right around here, but it's going to be completely transparent. Now that we're happy with our flame shape, I'm going to go ahead and start rigging bones to this shape. This is going to be the key to creating animation that is repeatable and loopable in the state machine. So again, if you're familiar with After Effects, there's a script, I think it's called path points to nulls, and there's various scripts that will do this. Duik has something built in that you can parent path points to bones. This is pretty similar to that. The bones in Rive basically become your nulls that you can parent each of the points on your shape to that'll allow you to create animation with it. So let's do that. I'm going to enter the path shape, which is again, hitting enter twice if you're on the shape, or if you're up here in this menu, you can hit edit vertices. I'm going to hit B to bring up bones, and I'm going to create a single bone for every single point in my shape. Hit escape each time that I've already created one. I'm just going to do my best to get as close as possible. It's not really necessary that it's there, but each of these is going to be an individual bone. And again, it's helpful to think about these as nulls. I'm holding shift as I pull them as well, and that's just a personal preference. I like them to be perfectly perpendicular to the canvas, and that just gives me a better sense of where it is on the X and Y and which direction it's facing, but you can really just create bones however you want. So I've now created 6 bones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and on each of the points of this flame shape path. So now all we have to do is with this path point selected, go over to the bind bones, hit plus. This blue frame will show up, and it's asking you to select which bones to bind. I'm going to grab all of these root bones that I created and hit done. So now it's color-coded each of the bones. I'm going to go ahead and name each of these bones so that it makes it easier for me to remember as we're animating. This will just be called bottom, left, right, top, left, and then trough or valley. And here we go. These are all the bones. You can even group them like this. So we're going to call this the flame bones. Another really cool thing about Rive's design system and space is you can just right click and say add tag, new tag. And we've created a tag now, and I'll go to edit tags to call it bones. With that tag selected, I can hit on or off here in the layers on the right side. That's how I keep organized sometimes. If I don't want to see all the bones, I'll just tag them and I will turn on or off this eyeball. So now that we've bound the path shapes and we've named them and we've got them in a nice order, now it's time to weight each of the points. Like if you've ever done weight painting in 3D, it can be a really complex process. Rive makes it incredibly simple, and so I'm going to show you how easy it is to do a quick rig like this. We want to go back into edit vertices so that we can see all the points. And then right over here, you'll see the menu has all of the bind bones, but we're just going to select one point at a time, including the Bezier handles that are connected to it right here. And then I can see that this is the pink top L bone. So I'm going to make sure that this is weighted to 100%. Do the same with the left, 100. This is the bottom bone. It's already weighted to 100% because that's the default, and then, or it's the origin point. This one is the right bone, 100%. Top right, 100. This valley here, I'm going to grab these points and hit that 100%. Now we're weighted. You can test it out by grabbing each of these bones like this. You can scale it out to make it do stuff like this. And it looks like it's working just fine. And you see how when I rotate the bone, it's a lot like having a null, right? It's like having a null that's connected to your path that is controlling the Bezier handles as well. It's pretty great. And that really is it for design and rigging. We're going to move on to animation now, where all the really fun stuff happens. So let's click over to animate. This is where we're going to spend the rest of the tutorial, hopefully. And I'm going to teach you how to animate on different timelines and then connect those to the state machine. Now, normally, and try to follow me here, normally when you are animating in After Effects and you create a flame animation like this, even with different path shapes animating at different times, if you want to create a nice loop of those animations, there's some math involved with figuring out exactly where that loop point needs to happen, or you would just set like random keyframes or something to just keep going. But if you want it to really loop, you have to sort of mess with those keyframes so that there's always going to be a point where all the flame pieces and parts finally come back together. So in Rive, you don't even have to think that way because each of these points can have their own timeline that loops, and then at runtime, they can loop at different points and they will all move separately of each other because that's how the state machine works. So I'm just gonna, that's a quick overview. I'm gonna show you how to do it. We're gonna start with this bottom piece of the flame. And on this one, this timeline, let's just call it bottom flame. And I'm gonna call it bottom flame X because I want it to move in the X axis. So on this bottom, we're gonna do 1 second of animation because that's the length of the timeline. We can change it to whatever we want. This one we'll just make 1 second. So I'm just gonna make this scale. I'm gonna add a little keyframe up here. You just click the little scale keyframe. And then 5 frames ahead, we're going to scale it out like this. 10 frames, we'll scale it back in. And I'm gonna add a little bit more randomness here. And since this plays at 60 frames per second, it's gonna be a pretty fast, it's gonna feel pretty fast. So I'm just gonna add some randomness again. And then right here, we'll just do one more last sort of big flicker back to the start. And I'm gonna grab that first keyframe, set it to the end, and now we have all these keyframes. Now, if you go to select all the keyframes, you'll notice that we have an interpolation menu over here as well. We're not going to get too much into this. I just really want to show you how to animate things quickly. But just know that this is where all your interpolation is. You can add a quick cubic interpolation to it, which is like an easy ease, and you can just pull these handles to have a little bit more ease on both sides, or you can make a cubic value that then you can change on the graph editor, right? So that's a quick overview. We're not going to get too much into it. Just know that we're just going to be clicking that cubic button for most of these keyframes on this tutorial. So that's feeling a little fast. So let me slow it down. I'm going to change this duration to 2 seconds. And I'm going to grab all of these keyframes again and hit Alt and stretch them out. Should feel very similar to After Effects. So I like that better. And so now you're noticing each time I press play with that space bar, it's stopping at the end of the timeline. If we want to change it to a loop, we can just use this little pull down here where there's an arrow and change it to loop. So now I'm just going to watch my loop over and over. There's our little bit of animation on the base of the flame. So stay with me here because we're going to start on another point and we're going to animate a whole different timeline for each point. Let's start with the top left one here. It's going to make perfect sense here in a second, but let's do top left, and then we're going to call this the X. We only want to grab this top left bone, and I only want to animate the X value. I'm going to go a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, and try to add this nice random motion, but only animating the X. And that's because if we touch the Y value on this, it's going to nullify any of the Y value animation that we do on another timeline. Okay. It's still feeling a little fast, so I'm going to make it a 1.5 seconds, and I'm going to grab all these keyframes and stretch them out again. There we go. And let's make it loop. Just going to double check these values real quick on the graph. Yeah, it looks like they're going a little too far in this direction, where that's the center over there. So let's make some of these actually go that way a little bit more. There. I'm going to change the interpolation to cubic again. There we go. This one needs a little bit more cubic. There we go. So now we have this nice X animation, which is again left and right for that point. And what we're going to do is we'll head back to the state machine, and I'm going to just do a quick run through of how to use this thing. You'll notice we have here layer 1, and then over here we have entry, we have an any state, we have exit. We're not going to worry about any of this stuff except that entry just means when the state starts playing, this animation will begin right away. There's no condition to it. When it enters the scene, it goes straight to this bottom flame X animation. That's what's happening on layer 1. I'm actually going to call layer 1 the bottom flame X. And if you press play on the state machine, you can see our animation playing in a nice loop. And you'll even see like the how far into the animation it is on this timeline. Let me head over to this layer menu again. It's going to start clicking. This is where it clicked for me. I'm going to add a layer here in the state machine. We're on one state machine here. I'm going to add a layer, and I'm going to call this, what do we call it? The top left X. And I'm going to drag this timeline in and connect it to the entry. And now both of those layers will be playing simultaneously. And remember, one of the timelines was 2 seconds long. The other one is 1.5 seconds. So the loop points are different. Let me press play and you'll see what I mean. So there you go. You've got the random kind of movement happening in the top and a little bit of random movement happening in the bottom. So now that we've done the X animation, the left and right, I'm going to add a whole other timeline that's just controlling the up and down movement. So the Y animation. We're going to make a new timeline. We'll call it top left Y. Let's grab that top left bone again and we'll just add a keyframe. I'm going to speed through this just so you don't have to watch me keep animating these points over and over again. But that's essentially what we're doing. We're creating new loops for each of the points. And depending on whether we want it to move up and down or left and right, we'll add the left and right movement to those bones. We'll add the up and down movement on separate layers. So there we go. We've got ourselves a nice Y animation. Only in the Y. There can be no keyframes in the X, or this will nullify and negate the X animation that we did on the other timeline. So now let's go back to our state machine. We'll create a new layer for the top left Y. And we'll grab this, hit it on our entry, and then we'll test it on the state machine. And you should see some nice random movement going on. Here we go. I'm going to speed through the rest of this. This is up to you, how you want to animate these things and at what intervals and all of that stuff, but I'm just going to show you the rest of it. So now if we flip back over to the original file that I made, you'll see in the state machine right here, all the layers. We've got the trough up and down. It's right here. I've got a bottom flame left and right, which is on both sides here. I have them both kind of doing this at the same time, going out and in. It looks like this. That's just the out and in of the left and right side. The bottom flame, the size is changing. The top right side is moving left and right. Top left side moves left and right like this. The right side goes up and down, and then the top left goes up and down. And they all have different looping points. So now if we go to the state machine of the flame flicker, I'm going to press play and you can see it all happening all at once. So there you have it. That's a pretty quick run through of making something that uses everything that Rive has to offer. You've got really clean and slick design tools. You have really easy to use animation timeline functions. And then you have the state machine. You can rig shapes to bones, and then you can use the state machine to layer up different parts of your animation to create randomness. This tool, Rive, has really just opened up for me a whole new way of thinking about animation design. I don't know what it is. There's something about it that's like it's firing all of the cylinders for me as an animator, and it's getting me excited to create more interactive animation in the very, very near future. So good luck. I hope you enjoyed this. Where do you go from here? So I would highly recommend checking out Rive 101, which is a whole YouTube series, a free YouTube series created by the folks at Rive. Robert takes you through the entire process of how to use Rive. And what's great about this, not only is that it's free, but it's really well done. Like, they did a great job just segmenting everything out. They make every lesson nice and short and sweet, and it just gets right to the point. And he doesn't just show you the how to use the app. There's a lot of why you're doing certain things the way that you're doing in the Rive app. If somebody isn't just showing you the software and just showing you how to click this, click that, but is really telling you the why behind everything, I think that's what Rive did really well on their 101 series. So definitely check that out. I'd also recommend watching the School of Motion sort of intro to Rive. Joey Kornman does a great intro to Rive and how to create like a nice interactive button. That's another great intro that you can go and watch. I'd also highly recommend watching the School of Motion interview with Guido Rosso, who is the founder and creator of Rive. He talks through sort of the philosophy of Rive and how it came to be and why it exists and just all the possibilities that are out there for animators right now using Rive. So yeah, enjoy making things in Rive. Hopefully you learned something and hopefully this was helpful for you. I got more Rive content coming. I'm going to show you guys how to make all kinds of stuff. So this is just the first step. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.